It's been a year since that fateful Halloween night in 2022 when everything I knew about reality unraveled. If someone had told me that a simple clown costume could make 5 people vanish, I would have laughed it off. But now, the echoes of that night haunt me, and laughter is the last thing on my mind. What started as an exciting venture into the world of event planning turned into an unending nightmare, one that seems intent on taking me down with it. My name is Lisa Montgomery, a 27-year-old event planner living in the bustling city of Portland, Oregon. I had just started my own event planning company after leaving a corporate job that drained my creativity. My best friend and roommate Megan Lewis was my biggest supporter, always encouraging me to chase my dreams. I was also navigating a new relationship with Jake Thompson, a graphic designer I met at a networking event. Life was finally starting to feel like it was falling into place. Then, it all began to unravel, one chilling thread at a time. A week before the Halloween gala, I received an unmarked package at my apartment containing an antique clown costume. The box was old, almost brittle, with no return address. The costume inside was intricately designed with vintage fabrics, each detail meticulously sewn, as if it were made by a master craftsman. The fabric smelled faintly of mildew, and a strange unease settled over me as I examined it. I assumed it was some kind of promotional prop for the event, but something about it felt wrong, like it was watching me. The costume had a presence to it, an unsettling energy that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I shoved it into a closet, trying to forget about it. But I couldn't forget. Every time I walked past the closet, I felt an urge to open the door, to look at the costume again. It was as if it called to me, whispering just beyond the edge of my perception. I tried to shake it off as nerves about the upcoming event, but the feeling only grew stronger. I found myself dreaming about the costume, vivid, unsettling dreams where the clown's empty eyes followed me, its stitched mouth curling into a sinister smile. During a late night at the venue, my assistant, Emily, found the clown costume hanging on a rack and decided to try it on for a laugh. She twirled in front of the dusty mirrors of the mansion's old ballroom, the oversized shoes clomping on the wooden floorboards. I turned my back for just a moment, distracted by a problem with the lights. When I looked back, Emily was gone. Her phone lay abandoned on the floor, the screen cracked, but there was no sign of Emily. Panic twisted in my chest. I called for her, my voice echoing in the empty hall, but there was only silence. The mansion felt different then, the air heavier, the shadows deeper. I could feel something watching me, something that wasn't there before. Determined to understand what was happening, I started researching the costume's origin. I visited the city archives, pulling out old records and newspaper clippings. I discovered that the mansion was once owned by a renowned magician, Victor Sinclair, who mysteriously vanished along with 4 guests during a Halloween party in 1922. The clown costume matched descriptions from the old clippings, a costume worn by Sinclair himself during his final performance, just before he and his guests were never seen again. The more I read, the more the pieces started to fit together. The disappearances, the strange occurrences, the feeling of being watched. It all pointed back to Sinclair and his obsession with the occult. Despite the eerie disappearance, Sophie, my client, insisted that the gala setup continue. Megan, Jake, and Brian came by to help with the final preparations. Megan photographed the strange costume, Jake sketched it out of fascination, and Brian, ever the joker, insisted on trying it on, much to my dismay. I watched, unease gnawing at me, as Brian pulled on the costume and struck a pose. He laughed, but it wasn't his usual carefree laugh. It was strained, almost forced. That was the last time I saw Brian. One by one, they began to vanish. Megan disappeared after photographing the ballroom. Jake after sketching alone in a side room. My world crumbled as I found myself alone, my friends slipping away like shadows. The mansion seemed to come alive after they disappeared. Doors that were once open were now locked, and hallways seemed to stretch on forever, twisting and turning in ways that made no sense. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the walls seemed to pulse, as if the house itself was breathing. I could hear whispers in the dark, soft and insistent, calling my name. I was terrified, but I couldn't leave. Not without my friends. The night of the gala arrived. Despite my mounting fear, Sophie was adamant. The show must go on. Guests began to arrive, their laughter and chatter filling the halls of the mansion. In the center of the main hall stood the clown costume, now on a mannequin, its blank eyes staring out at the crowd. The lights flickered, and a strange, haunting melody played from an old phonograph, a tune I recognized from my research as the one played during Victor Sinclair's final performance. Whispers spread among the guests as strange occurrences began. Shadows moved without a source. The air grew unnaturally cold, and the clown costume seemed to shift positions when no one was looking. I could feel the panic rising in my chest, but I had to keep it together. I had to find a way to end this. I remembered a circus I attended as a child, how a clown had performed a vanishing act, making audience members disappear. I remembered the unease I felt even then, the way the clown's eyes seemed to linger on me, his smile too wide, too knowing. The memory struck me now with chilling clarity. The clown had been Victor Sinclair, performing under a different name. It all made sense now. The costume, the mansion, the disappearances. Sinclair had found a way to cheat death, to trap others in his place. Another memory surfaced, my grandmother's voice warning me about the Sinclair mansion. "That house has seen too much darkness, Lisa," she had said. "People go missing there, always on Halloween. You stay away from that place." I had laughed it off then, but now her words echoed in my mind like a prophecy. I wished I had listened. Desperate, I searched the mansion for answers. I stumbled upon a hidden door behind a dusty bookshelf in the library, leading to a secret room. The air was thick, oppressive, and the smell of decay was almost overwhelming. In the center of the room stood an ornate mirror, its frame carved with symbols that matched the pattern on the clown costume. Around the room were other costumes, each one draped lifelessly on mannequins, their hollow eyes staring at me. I felt a chill run down my spine as I stepped closer to the mirror. I could see faint reflections of my missing friends in the mirror, their eyes wide with fear, their mouths open in silent screams. My heart pounded as I realized the truth. The mirror was a portal, a twisted relic of Victor Sinclair's dark magic. The costume was the key, a conduit that bound its wearer to the mirror's cursed reflection. I could feel the weight of it all pressing down on me. The fear, the guilt, the desperation. I had to save them. I couldn't let them be trapped forever. I knew what I had to do. With trembling hands, I donned the clown costume. The fabric felt cold against my skin, almost alive, as if it were trying to merge with me. The mansion's lights flickered, then went out entirely, plunging me into darkness. A moment later, I found myself not in the mansion, but in a spectral version of the gala. Ghostly figures danced around me, their faces blurred, their laughter hollow and echoing. In the center of the room stood Victor Sinclair, his eyes dark and empty, his smile twisted. "You want them back?" he hissed, his voice echoing in the unnatural silence. "Then finish what I could not." My resolve hardened. I raised the pocket watch I had found among my grandmother's things. A watch that had belonged to my grandfather, who had been one of Sinclair's victims. The hands of the watch spun wildly, and I felt a surge of energy, a connection to the past, to the pain and loss that had haunted my family for generations. I whispered a prayer, then smashed the watch against the mirror. The mirror shattered with an ear-splitting crack, light pouring out of it in blinding waves. The ghostly figures dissolved, their forms unraveling like mist in the wind. I felt myself falling, the world spinning around me, the air ripped from my lungs. I could hear Sinclair's scream, a sound of pure rage and desperation, as the light consumed him. I woke on the cold floor of the mansion's main hall, my head pounding, my vision blurred. Guests surrounded me, their faces pale with concern. Sophie knelt beside me, her harsh demeanor softened, her voice trembling as she apologized. Megan, Jake, and Brian were there too, dazed but unharmed, their memories of what had happened hazy at best. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding, a wave of relief washing over me. It was over. I had saved them. But as we left the mansion, my eyes were drawn to the pocket watch, lying on the ground where I had dropped it. The hands were spinning backward, faster and faster. My stomach twisted with unease. I knew this wasn't truly over. Sinclair's magic was still at work, and somehow it had latched onto me. Later that night, as I sat alone in my apartment, a package arrived at my door, unmarked, just like before. My hands shook as I opened it, revealing a small, ornate music box. I wound it hesitantly, and the same eerie tune from the gala began to play, the haunting melody filling the room. Beneath the lid was a note, written in elegant, old-fashioned script. "The show must go on." My heart sank. The curse wasn't broken. It had merely shifted, and now it was my burden to bear. The echoes of that night would follow me, the laughter of the vanished, the haunting melody of the music box. I knew deep down that Victor Sinclair wasn't done with me yet. The show, after all, must go on. The days that followed were a blur of paranoia and fear. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the mansion, the mirror, the twisted smile of Victor Sinclair. The music box's melody seemed to follow me, playing faintly in the background no matter where I was. I would catch glimpses of movement in the corner of my eye. A flash of a clown's costume, the blur of a face that didn't belong. The shadows in my apartment seemed to grow darker, more oppressive, and I could feel the presence of something watching me, waiting for me to slip. One night, I woke to the sound of the music box playing. The eerie tune echoed through the apartment, and I felt a chill seep into my bones. I got up, my heart pounding, and followed the sound to the living room. There, in the dim light, I saw it, the clown costume, standing upright as if someone were wearing it, the empty eyes staring at me. I gasped, stumbling backward, but when I blinked, it was gone. The music box lay on the floor, the lid open, the melody winding down to silence. I knew I couldn't keep living like this. I had to find a way to end it, to break the curse once and for all. I returned to the mansion, the place where it had all begun. The air was thick with fog, and the moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the grounds. The mansion loomed before me, its windows dark and empty, like the hollow eyes of the clown costume. I took a deep breath and pushed open the door, the hinges creaking in protest. The house was silent, the air heavy with the scent of decay. I made my way to the library, to the hidden room behind the bookshelf. The mirror was gone, shattered pieces still littering the floor, but I could feel the presence of something, a lingering darkness that seemed to pulse with energy. I knew Sinclair was still here, trapped between worlds, and I had to face him. I closed my eyes, focusing on the pocket watch in my hand. I could feel its cold weight, the hands still spinning backward. I whispered a prayer, calling out to my grandmother, to my grandfather, to anyone who could hear me. The air around me grew colder, and I opened my eyes to see the ghostly figures of my friends, their faces filled with fear. Sinclair stood among them, his eyes dark and empty, his smile twisted into a snarl. "You can't escape me," he hissed, his voice echoing through the room. "The show must go on." I felt a surge of anger, of determination. I wouldn't let him win. I raised the pocket watch, its hands spinning faster and faster, and threw it to the ground. The watch shattered, and a blinding light filled the room, the force of it knocking me backward. I heard Sinclair's scream, a sound of pure rage and desperation. And then there was silence. When I opened my eyes, the room was empty. The ghostly figures were gone, and the air felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. I took a deep breath, tears streaming down my face. It was over. I had done it. I left the mansion, the sun just beginning to rise over the horizon. The fog had lifted, and the air was crisp and clear. I knew that Sinclair was gone, that the curse had been broken, but as I walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching me, that the echoes of that night would never truly leave me. The music box still sits on my shelf, its melody silent for now. But every so often I hear it, a faint, haunting tune that reminds me that the past is never truly gone, that the darkness still lingers, waiting for its chance to return. And I know, deep down, that the show must indeed go on.